a stunning meditation on connection, isolation, and transformation, all told through the silent journey of a deep-sea creature. The film's visual style is both grounded in realism and fantasy. It was also created entirely with generative AI, but in a way that feels deeply personal and intentional. So here we are with the director of The Bends. So Tiffany, do you mind introducing yourself, saying who you are and what your role is on the film?
My name is Tiffany Lin, and I am the writer and director of The Bends.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to jump into segment 1, creative intent behind The Bends. What was the original inspiration behind The Bends?
When I was making The Bends, I think initially I was presented with this opportunity to create this project with generative AI. And for me, because I'm someone who has come out of both the live action and animation worlds, and in approaching generative AI, I really wanted to make sure that this was a story that really warranted the use of this medium rather than something that I could just do in animation or in live action. And so I think that line of thinking really took me to the bottom of the ocean in terms of just thinking about what's something that is really inaccessible, that's a little bit haunted, and it's just a really deep well of inspiration for me. And I've always loved the ocean, grew up in the Bay Area, so I was always very close to the coast. I even have these little fish tattoos on my arm. So I think making a fish movie is definitely something that I've done before, and hopefully will continue to do. But yeah, I think as far as this specific film, I was inspired by this article that I had read a while back, where it was talking about how these blobfish, which I'd seen many images of on the internet, where it's this kind of ugly looking gloopy mess of a fish. They actually don't look like that when they're on the bottom of the ocean, because all the pressure, it kind of holds their bodies together, and it's only when you bring them really quickly to the top that they deform in that way. And I thought that was a really interesting sort of idea, where it's the physical environment around this particular fish, it creates such a hazard for it, and there's something very poetic and tragic about it. And so that was sort of what inspired I guess this story. And I think in creating this narrative too, I wanted to do something that felt like The Little Mermaid, but maybe more of the Hans Christian Andersen version of it, where it is sort of embracing this darkness, this weird fantasy, but instead of a mermaid, it's about a blobfish. So
very cool. Can you talk about the emotional and the visual tone of the film?
Okay, yeah. So I guess overall, the tone of the film, it does live in this very dark, fantastical place, and in bringing that to life with the visual style, we ended up using a very photoreal style, both because it was something that the ETC wanted to explore with generative AI, but also because I think it really fully gives the biggest range of grotesqueness that you can experience and really feel this transformation. It's almost kind of leaning into body horror a bit. And so a lot of the references and things that I was drawing from were both sort of different nature documentaries. I love Planet Earth, and there's also this documentary called Oceans that our consulting DP actually recommended, and is also really great. And I think blending that with films where the main character is just a non-speaking animal, sort of like Andrea Arnold. She directed a film called Cow, recently EO that came out at Cannes a few years ago, where they just kind of follow this creature that isn't necessarily this anthropomorphized version of that animal, but rather just seeing them exist and live in their environments. That was really inspiring for me. Oh, and then I guess another tonal thing that I should mention, it takes a lot of tonal inspiration from the actual Radiohead album The Bends as well. I originally, when I was like thinking of this project, I was just like, yeah, it is kind of like funny to just name it after that album. But I think in investigating it and kind of like diving deeper, I think a lot of these like themes of yearning and this like idea of wanting to search for something more, or like seeing if that is all there is. I think those are themes that really come through in that album, and definitely wanted to reflect that in this film.
Awesome. Cool. So you've described this as a concept art driven film. What does that mean in the context of using AI?
Yeah, with this film, I think we really wanted to have a lot of human intention imbued throughout the process. I think when you say like a film is generative AI, I feel like that can like mean a lot of things, and I want people to know that this film, the like core idea of it, is all very human. I wrote the script myself. I storyboarded the film myself. All of those ideas that are at the heart of this film are very much from, I guess, like my own vision that I have for this. There are like other areas that we use more AI to like help with like the look development and like rendering some of these things out, but at the very core, it is very intentional.
So in that case, how do you respond to people who assume AI generated visuals lack artistic intent?
I think with AI generated visuals, like they're not going to give you something that isn't already there. So if you don't have anything to say, your visuals aren't really going to have anything to say either. And I think no matter what medium you're using, I think artistic intent can come through if you are grasping the tools that you have and understanding, how to communicate your ideas. I think for me, like generative AI I've been treating it as just like another medium, and so I think it's possible to really showcase artistic intent in AI. It's possible to showcase artistic intent in like experimental animation, like anything of that sort. And so, like I think there are also a lot of ways, you can like process your images that are like starting from like this generative AI base, but then kind of going in and like painting in like shadows, kind of doing a lot of like modifications to it. That also works. Like for this project, there was like a lot of generated visuals to start the look development, but there were certain things that I had to do on my own to really bring them to a space where it matched that like vision that I had for the film.
You mentioned how you wrote and you storyboarded the film all by yourself. So did the AI help you shape any part of the story, or did you want to make sure that you were it was fully on your vision and you were kept shaping the AI from there?
Yeah, I didn't use any AI to write the story.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, I think that was kind of like a division that I wanted to keep clear. I think both just for like, copyright purposes, but also for me, like AI doesn't really help me understand the story more than I understand it. I think that's just like a personal journey that you have to go on yourself. And, it's like being able to put that like thought and time into that will allow you to create like a deeper world. I think for me too, like I think that there are certain things that like AI can like potentially like help with in the writing process, but I think there's just certain things where it's just kind of like, it just kind of like regurgitates like what you already know back to you. And I think in some cases, like it's nice to hear like an alternative like version. But for the most part, any of the like main core like story beats, like ideas, like that all just kind of came from the writing process, like the development process. Maybe they did like run the script through like I don't know, different like platforms for like producer notes or things like that. I'm not really sure what their process was on that, but I can say like on my end, at least for writing, like that was all human. I'd say same for like storyboards. Like I think with narrative linear film specifically, there is just like a cinematic grammar that like you really need to have a good grasp of, that AI doesn't necessarily have. I think it's really good at making like pretty looking shots, but having those pretty looking shots string together is kind of a whole different story. And then it's like when you're trying to make the shots like communicate a certain like emotion, like narrative beat, a whole sort of different things. And I think being able to start from like the page, or in Photoshop where I was doing a lot of the boards, that was something that I think I just needed to envision for myself as a director. I will say, like in Photoshop, there were some things that like I used their like generative fill for, like for example, like just doing kind of a quick ocean texture, like that helps save time. But I think because this story is so specific, I really just needed to like go in myself and put it together first.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, cool. When you see what AI created for the film, was there any part that surprised you that was either visually or emotionally stunning that aligned with your vision?
Yeah, I mean, I think in this film, one of the main driving reasons for making it, as I mentioned, was trying to leverage AI as a medium. And so while it did say like I storyboarded like the film, a lot of it, there are also sections where I left a bit looser, just like knowing, that like things that come out of the model might really change my perception of like what that section of the film might look like. There's because it does kind of lean into abstraction in certain areas. And so being able to see kind of what came out for those sections was really interesting, especially because like a big part of this film is like that transformation, that morphing. And so like I think there was kind of a part of me that was just like, I want to like leave it up to the machine a little bit and see like what it can give me, as far as just like seeing this journey of this fish. And so there has been like a lot of really interesting stuff that it's like spit out, and now as we're trying to like put it together, it's like making meaning out of it is like a whole other thing. But I think like just seeing some of the images that like I left loose a little bit on purpose, and seeing it kind of come back fully realized, I think that was really cool.